Let's get going. So welcome to Tech Talk Live. This is episode 52, I believe, of Tech Talk Live. And today we are talking about Alfresco and Drupal working together. Just a quick reminder that we are recording the session. So we tend to get lots of views afterwards, and these will be the slides as well as the recorded presentation will be posted for you to check out later. So let me just jump right in and introduce our guest today. We have Ian Norton. Ian is a senior web architect here at Alfresco, and Ian offices out of Maidenhead, and he does a lot of work building websites for Alfresco, and recently created a new Drupal module called CMS Views, and so we'll be talking about that today. And what else do you have to say for yourself, Ian?
Well, thanks, Jeff, and thanks for inviting me to be here. It's an honor and a privilege. I guess my background in content management. I started out around 8 years ago working on a sort of bespoke, very small site for a .com company, and they just needed a way to manage their content. That quickly led into solutions like Mambo, which was then forked into Joomla and Drupal, and then sort of as my career progressed and sort of the requirements of content management progressed with them, Alfresco, which when people needed to manage big content with collaboration over larger companies, led me there. And I started working there in 2010. And in 2011, we launched our first Alfresco and Drupal integrated solution with Alfresco team. And since then, we've been working on the partners site. And at the moment, what's mainly keeping me busy work-wise is the alfresco.com site, which we're hoping to launch next month.
Cool. So Alfresco, it seems like we're doing a lot with Drupal sites lately. So the team site, the partner site, add-ons is another site that is Drupal-based, and now the new alfresco.com site, which will be up sometime later this year, is also based on Drupal. So that's cool. How long have you been working with Drupal? So you've got 8 years of content management experience. How much of that has been with Drupal?
Drupal's far more recent, mainly within the last year, seriously looking at it, and before then I've implemented a few small Drupal 6 sites, nothing on a grand scale or on, nothing on a huge scale, but just smaller scale sites. So sort of building on there, Drupal 7's where we started at Alfresco and baselined with that, so there's quite a lot of new things in there as well.
And so it seems, ever since the first sort of integrations between Alfresco and Drupal started showing up a few years ago, there's always a lot of interest in this topic. And a lot of people sometimes have the misconception that Drupal and Alfresco compete. But really, I think we see it as a complementary tool set. But why do you think, do you have an opinion on why so many people like to use Alfresco and Drupal together?
Yeah, certainly at Alfresco, it's the perfect sort of usage scenario for using the two together. And with Alfresco, you've got the powerful document management capabilities of collaboration and advanced workflow, and being able to publish to various locations through the social APIs that have recently been introduced. And with Drupal, what you've got is a very powerful presentation management tier. And when you combine those two things, you end up with the best of both worlds, with advanced workflow and also that very easy to manage presentation tier. That's you don't have to be a technical expert to dive into Drupal or even Alfresco and start editing on files. And when you combine those two, you've got a very powerful editorial environment for documents and also a very powerful editorial environment for web content in Drupal.
So it looks like you have a few slides. I'll let you sort of get into this. Are you going to talk about the different tools that are available for integrating the two? Because I think that's something that some people will want to know is, okay, I see what Drupal is, I know what Alfresco is, now what what are my options for sort of combining the two?
Yeah, certainly. What I was going to just go through is talk about options on why to integrate, some considerations to think about when integrating, and things like the user management issues, and then move on to those integration options that you just mentioned, Jeff, and look at sort of the different modules available there, and they sort of, they start at different points. So you might want to start right at the very, right at the bottom with a CMIS wrapper, and you might want to go all the way to the top and have something that's, a ready-made solution for you. I think it's very much different solutions for different users and implementations. There's not sort of one solution fits everyone with Drupal and Alfresco. And then I was just going to do a quick demo with the CMIS API module for Drupal, and then also show how CMS Views builds on that, and just sort of very briefly dive into how that works. And questions and answers, please feel free to bring them on throughout, because I don't want to bore everyone to death with PowerPoint, and I don't want to sort of drag on too long either on each sort of different implementation. So please feel free to jump in at any point, Jeff.
All right, I will. That sounds cool.
Okay, so I think we just sort of touched on why you'd want to integrate. I'm not going to sort of give too much background into Drupal and Alfresco. I think most people here today probably already understand what the two systems do. But for me, I guess that line, seamless presentation of documents in the web browser. So whenever I've approached this, I've wanted it to look like to the end user when they're on the site, that it's actually part of that web page. It's not part of another system that's been brought in. It doesn't, sometimes you see integrations that look a bit kludgy and don't quite work well together. But all of the ones that I'll sort of be discussing here are quite nice, and offer a way to sort of either start building or implement straight away. Okay, so first of all, there's just some considerations. I'm going to sort of discuss these over 2 or 3 slides. These are the sort of considerations that could take days, if not weeks, to consider within an organization on different ways you might want to consider implementing Alfresco and Drupal together. Firstly, is the mechanism of how you actually get that content into Alfresco or Drupal. In the past, Richard McKnight of Alfresco has built an integration where Drupal is considered to be like a deployment target using the AVM in Alfresco, and then files are pushed directly into Drupal. Now, with the way the AVM's gone and subscriptions not being sold on that, theoretically this could now be achieved with the publishing service in Alfresco 3.3. So this isn't something that I've seen done, but it's theoretically is possible. And the times you might want to look at this is if you've got a Drupal website that you know that it's capable of delivering the amount of data it needs to. It's got maybe 100,000 hits a day or something like that, and that's fine. You're not having to then add more servers or extra RAM or think about your Alfresco tier, because it's all pushed it directly to the Drupal tier. So there's only one of them to manage in the web tier there. And contrasting that is the pull mechanism, where Drupal pulls content down from Alfresco directly. So this is most of the solutions I'll be talking about today use the pull mechanism. The CMS API module uses pull in both the browser and the query modules, which I'll talk about later. There's also a CMS sync module with the CMS API, and although that appears to be, the content's actually being pulled from Drupal and then copied directly into Drupal. So being pulled from Alfresco and then copied directly into Drupal. So it's looking into Alfresco, taking that content, and it just creates a copy. And then every time when cron runs, it updates that. Again, I won't get too ahead of that because I'll discuss that later.
So the CMS module and CMS sync, those are part of the CMS API project on Drupal.
Yeah, precisely, Jeff. And I'll come on to discuss that a little bit more and do a brief demo of how that works.
Okay.
And then there's other modules like the one that I've written that goes and gets a folder, a representation as an object, and then displays that. So it's displaying that at runtime and connecting directly into the Alfresco system. So there's important considerations there. Obviously, if you're going directly into the Alfresco system each time, you need to make sure that the Alfresco server is capable of that load, as well as the Drupal server. If you're using CMS Sync, you don't have to worry so much about the Alfresco server because the Alfresco server is only being hit on cron each time. Okay, and the next thing to consider is user management. I've written it in capitals at the top there. Consider user management carefully. It's what you're allowing people to do through Drupal is access your document management system. So if you've got all of your internal documents on there and you grant somebody at Drupal access to all of those, if you're not careful with these permissions, you're opening up all of your documents. So you might want to look at authenticating people when they log into Drupal against Alfresco. So if I worked in marketing and I only had access to marketing documents, Drupal would then only show me marketing documents because it was logging me into Alfresco via my username and shared credentials. Another way of doing it, and a much simpler way of doing it, is to consider having safe folders in Alfresco that are accessible with a generic Drupal user. And that's how we've set it up at Alfresco, because we don't have different permissions on our documents at the moment. It's something we may need to look at in the future. So everyone sees the same thing at the moment. So we're able to just have one generic Drupal user coming in and accessing those contents and bringing it back. If we wanted to tier our information that we give out to different people or different sectors, so if we had partners that were in America and we wanted to see something different to partners in Europe, we'd need to have permissions onto those user accounts and log those users in or manually rather than having a generic user.
Are there modules that already exist that do the second bullet, so that would do sort of authentication using the Drupal user credentials against Alfresco?
There's an example in the CMIS API of doing basic authentication, and on the Alfresco partners site, we've done an authentication where you log in and it actually opens a CMIS session up for you. That's for a different purpose, so that goes and gets some of your user credentials. So it checks that your username and so if you were to get married or your email address changed, it automatically updates that from Alfresco. So it's not a million miles away. There's certainly stuff to look at that you could have a look at in the CMS API module that I'll talk about later. But if you wanted a starting point to look at that, that would be where you went. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to move on and start discussing integration options now. A lot of these modules, not all of them, but most of them have use Richard McKnight's PHP CMIS wrapper as a basis for connecting and talking to a CMIS repository, or the Alfresco repository in this case. Essentially, it enables PHP to talk natively to the CMIS client and say things like get folder, get title, and bring them back as an object and use them in bits of Drupal or PHP code. Richard's been kind enough to contribute this to Apache Chemistry, where you can find out more about it. The address is just down there. It's used by Drupal, WordPress, and Sugar CRM. The Drupal implementation is based in various different modules, and I'll sort of touch on those and mention where they're used in the forthcoming slides. It all uses curl, and I'll just discuss how that's used in various places. The next one, and this is the only one I'll be talking about that doesn't use that previous wrapper, is the Drupal Alfresco project. And just the naming of that, it's not an official Alfresco Drupal module. It's actually sponsored by a company called GMV Innovating Solutions, which I believe are based out of Spain. It's designed for Drupal 6 only. There's not a Drupal 7 port of that at the moment, but it does work with Alfresco 2.x and 3.x and uses SOAP as opposed to CMIS. So this sort of took a little bit of a different implementation approach. They haven't chosen to use CMIS. It does, and therefore it supports older versions of Alfresco. There's 107 sites at the moment reporting to be using it, so it's being used by different people and organisations. There's a couple of interesting things. First, it defines a field type in Drupal. So I could have a page that might be a new press release, and in there I talk about the press release and want to link to that as a PDF. what that enabled me to do is build a content type where I have a field that I just click a button and it launches an Alfresco, or sorry, CMIS browser, and goes off, and I can select that file and attach it as a CMIS attachment. Sorry, I'm saying CMIS and this isn't CMIS, as an Alfresco attachment. It'll also create a whole new content type for you. It'll actually copy content down from Alfresco and store it locally in Drupal. And the reason why this is such a good thing that it does is it enables you to then search against those properties that it's copied, and then it will link back to the document or the web page within Alfresco. Just got a screen grab of the browser there, which is it is quite a nice looking browser. It's quite user friendly. It's built using the XJS library. The downside of this is at the moment it only supports Drupal 6, and it does seem a little bit inactive on the project page. And the next one that I'll talk about is Canopy from Acquia and Alfresco partner Appnovation. And it's a collection of web services, REST APIs, and also the CMIS implementation, the CMIS wrapper, which I believe it's the same one. I haven't looked at the source code, but I'm pretty sure it's the same one written by Richard McKnight. The great thing about and the unique thing about Canopy is that you can create pages in Drupal, and if you don't set them to publish, they then appear automatically in Alfresco, and you're able to assign them to a workflow within Alfresco. So if you work at an organization that has a large and complicated approval process, and you want people to edit on both sides, both in Alfresco and Drupal, Canopy is definitely worth a look at. Likewise, you could start that process off from Alfresco Share, send it into a workflow, and once it's approved, it will publish directly to Drupal. It's quite a nice little video on the Appnovation site, just discussing what Canopy does and how it can be used, and it's well worth a visit if that sounds like it's something that might work for your organisation. Okay, and moving on, I think I've talked a little bit about the Drupal CMIS API. The core modules in there that are the query, browse, and sync modules. And what all of those are actually doing is building on Rich McKnight's CMIS PHP wrapper and turning them all into functions that can be used throughout Drupal and wherever you include the Drupal, the CMIS API file. So those three modules that it has in there are very useful for sort of having a look at, having a play around with, and maybe thinking about where you'd like to take it, and also learning a bit about how it works and how it talks to all the actual repository files and all the APIs in there. I guess it works best for how we've used it as scaffolding for building other modules on top of it. And what we've done is managed our documents in Alfresco, and then we've surfaced them into Drupal by selecting the relevant folder and then pushing them out. Currently being used by 277 sites on Drupal.org, and there's a Drupal 6 version and a Drupal 7 version. The Drupal 7 version is not an official release at the moment. It's still a dev release, but it works quite well in most of the things it does. There's a couple of things seem a little bit flaky, but there is at least a version to get started on there. The configuration of this is really simple. So you go to your settings.php file in Drupal and just add a configuration line which just points so I'm just saying here, it's the default repository, and we've got a username of admin, which is just the default Alfresco install. We've just got the normal default location there for the CMIS service. Okay, and the next, I'm going to do a little bit, a small demo on the CMIS API once I finish talking about all the different integration options. The next one's CMS Views, which I've developed at Alfresco, and we're using it on our team and partners site. And we'll also be using it on our .com site when it launches in April. And what it enables you to do is take a folder path and turn that into an object ID that's then returned to Drupal, and then we iterate through that and display each item in that folder out to the user, showing them a formatted list of documents on the page. We save each query that we have in there as a block of content in Drupal. People familiar with Drupal will immediately know what I mean by blocks. So a menu item might be a block, a contact us form might be a block, and I'll just when I do the demo, I'll just iterate what I mean by that for people who aren't familiar with the block system. It's now got an official page at Drupal rather than just being a sandbox project, and that's Project CMS Views. We always welcome feedback and input on that. I'll be discussing a few plans that we've got for it in the next few months at the end of the call. And if people want to get involved, then contact us on either addons.alfresco.com or drupal.org.
So Ian, quick question on this one. So does the maybe this has been taken out, but it seems like in early versions of the Drupal CMIS module, there was a way to do a block that would show the result of a CMIS query in a block.
Yeah, so I have missed that bit. Yeah, what you can do, Jeff, is you can either choose a folder path and it actually creates the query on the fly for you, or you're able to specify your own query. So, for instance, how we've used it on partners is we say, show me everything within this folder that is tagged with 4.0, and then it will return all those objects in that query.
Oh, okay. I was just trying to figure out what the gap is, what does this module do that the Drupal CMIS API module doesn't do? It sounds like maybe this is more flexible in terms of how you build your blocks.
This allows you to actually save the content and then assign it to blocks within Drupal. So CMIS API, although it allows you to sync content across, you've then got no way, like for our requirements, what we wanted to do is have supplementary information on the page. So you might have a page about Alfresco 4, and then you might have a bunch of white papers on Alfresco 4 or marketing collateral. And with the block system in Drupal, you're able to assign a block to a certain page or a group of pages. And so by integrating CMS Views with that block system, we're able to say, on all these pages, all the Alfresco 4 pages, let's put all of the Alfresco 4 collateral on those pages.
Cool.
Okay. So there's just how it works on the partner site. So each of those is a separate file within Alfresco, and they're all grouped. All of these ones are grouped by a folder. Now we can put, as I mentioned just previously, we can put a custom query in there and call things back from anywhere in the repository based on the tag. So if they were tagged with a certain like 4.0 or 3.4, we could create a block of content that just had all of those brought back. Okay, I'm going to do a little demo. So hopefully this is all going to go okay. Firstly, I'm going to upload something using the CMS API browser module that comes as part of that. It's a pretty handy module for firstly just finding out how everything's bolted together, how it's using Rich Ignite's PHP CMS wrapper, and also it does have the functionality of being able to upload things from Drupal directly into Alfresco. And then once I've gone through that, what I'm going to do is go through how you display CMS content as a themed block on a Drupal site. So if you just bear with me while I fire up the browser.
Hey, Ian, while your browser's coming up, can you sort of tell us what versions of Alfresco and Drupal the CMS Views module is known to work with?
CMS Views will work with Drupal. It's only Drupal 7. There's no Drupal 6 backport. And with Alfresco, it will work with, it's been tested with 3.4 and 4. The only problem that I've had in the past using it with 4 is where Solar's being used as the search subsystem. But I mean, that's quite easy to turn it back to Lucene, and I think those problems are fixed as of the Enterprise and 4.0.d release. And I've got it running here with Alfresco 4.0.c, so it certainly works with all of those. Sometimes, unfortunately, Solar can cause problems though.
Okay, great.
Okay, so can you see my screen, Jeff?
Looks great.
Fantastic. Okay, so firstly, I've just discussed a little bit about the browser. So this is just a browser into our Alfresco install. So anyone who's used Alfresco recognize those 4 folders: sites, user home, guest home, data dictionary. I'm logged in as a generic Drupal user, so I can go through the different folders and just going into the sites folder, which is the share sites. I am able to set a default location in my configuration file. So I could go directly, if I was always going into the marketing site, document library, for instance, I could just set that automatically here in the settings.php rather than having to go through this process every time. So I'm just going to upload a file, create a folder, and then upload a file. There. Maybe I'm not.
Did you forget to pour your tribute to the demo gods when you woke up today?
I did indeed, Jeff. I'm not quite sure what happened there. Let me just. It uploaded the picture. Okay, so Alfresco is definitely up and running. I've run through this 3 times this morning and this afternoon, and it works every time. Okay, so it's uploading a picture fine. So let me just try and create a folder again.
This is the CMS API module that we're looking at here, right?
This is the CMS API module, which is project/CMS on Drupal.org. And this is the CMS, it has a few modules within there, and this is the CMS browser module. Yeah, the demo gods have taken pity on me, I think. Look at that. So that's to my relief, that's now working. It's uploaded just a quick picture of my dog there. So if I now browse you can see it there, pictures, it's in the pictures folder. I can just click that. And there she is, helping with CMS Views. So that's how the browser works and how you can upload directly. So rather than having task staff going into both systems, they can just go directly into Drupal and upload things to there. I prefer loading things into Alfresco, particularly 4.0, because there's the drag and drop functionality. It's very easy to just quickly edit metadata in there. So you can also do that. I'm now going to demonstrate how CMS Views pulls that content out. So say we've got at Alfresco a bunch of white papers. First of all, we create a folder in there in our marketing site. Just take them there. Okay.
I don't know about everybody else. Oh, there we go. It was your screen was lagging a bit, but it's catching up now.
It's a slow internet in the Midlands in England. Okay, so I'm going to drag those now, and are they all shown as selected, Jeff?
Yes.
I'm going to using Alfresco, I can just drag and drop those in, automatically upload them. For me, that's a lot quicker than doing it through the CMS browser interface. Obviously, that could be built out to incorporate that upload process, but for now, this feels like the nicest way to do it. So here we have all of our white papers. I can edit the properties of these. So I might want a more friendly file name. Let's change that to, rather than the first thing, So we've got the file name there, .pdf, cast in the cloud. So let's just elaborate a little bit in the description. Say Alfresco white paper. Cast in the cloud. Okay, I'm just going to save that. And I'm just going to flick back to Drupal and just go to structure. And now what we're going to do is build a CMS view to go and get this content and display it on our page. I'm going to move to the home page first. And you can see this is just a complete stock. This is just a complete stock install of Acquia Drupal, I think it's 7.10. And the only two modules I've installed are the CMIS API module and CMS Views, and just added those 4 lines of configuration. So I want to create a new CMS View block. So go to block, structure, and then blocks. And we have a new option that the CMS Views module has added, which is add a new CMS View. I'm going to click that, just give it a few seconds for it to load. Enter a name there of white papers. We've got the option here, as I discussed earlier. I find it's always easier to visualize things on the screen than sort of discuss them over a PowerPoint. So here we've got the option of selecting a CMS query, and we can write a query to go and get specific tags or specific MIME types or things like that. Basically have the freedom to write anything that you can possibly write in CMS. Or you can select a folder location, which most of the time at Alfresco is what we're using it for. So I just click Browse CMS Repository, and again we get that familiar view of the 4 different folders. I'll click on Sites, Marketing, Document Library, and White Papers. And there's our white papers that we uploaded before, and we just see the file name of each of those. So can you see those okay, Jeff?
Sorry, I was on mute. Actually, it's lagging a bit. So right now I'm seeing you. Yeah, now the folder picker is up.
Okay. So I'll just wait for a couple of seconds just for it to catch up for everyone.
Okay.
So what that selects is, once it loads, it's just loaded the folder path in there. And in this CMIS API file, that's part of the CMIS API module, there's a function there that's getObject by path. And so once we save this view, it will go off and save this white papers location, and it will take that and it'll go to Alfresco using the API, and it'll say, I've got this path. What's the actual object reference for it? It will then construct a query. It will then save that into the database, and then at runtime it will construct a query to execute. And it also, at the same time, does a CMS join to get the title aspects, because CMS doesn't support those by default.
So this is cool. So this just clicked for me. So in the CMS API module, there's the ability to give it a query and have that specified as a block, but that's done in code. And what you're doing here is you're allowing non-technical users to create these blocks as content. And
yeah, because essentially otherwise, Jeff, what you'd have to do is every time you wanted to add some content to the website, you'd have to write a new, like a new line of code that sent it through either the API or issued a query. So you'd have to generate a query, and then you'd have to attach that to a page.
Yeah, that's cool. So, and this stores it as content in a node within Drupal, right? And then
at the moment, how this stores it is in a database table. I'll come on to and talk about storing things as entities later on. So it stores it as a database table, and then it's attached to a block, which is then I'll show. Well, the screen loads up after this one, and I'll talk about the options you've got for displaying that. And then at runtime, it finds that ID and it goes and queries the CMIS repository with it.
Yeah, that's cool.
So a lot of those APIs are provided. All of those APIs, in fact, are provided in the CMIS API module. What that doesn't really give you a method of doing is placing bits of content on specific pages, and that's what CMS Views does. So if I select this folder, very simply, it just copies that file path location into there. So sites, marketing, document library, white papers. And then finally, on this page, I've got a choice of options of how to theme the CMS view. The first being the bulleted list, which is very basic, just shows you the file type and size. Next is paragraphs with description, file type, size and date. Third, table with file name, title, description, type, size and date. And last but not least is, and the one I'm going to use, display title and description details with a thumbnail. So that's it's the prettiest, I guess. It also shows the thumbnails. They're the same thumbnails as Alfresco Share shows, and we put those in the module just for consistency with Alfresco because we were using them on Alfresco site. So I click save. I've got given me a stack of warnings about security updates because it's not the latest release. Anyone who's known Drupal will know about those. I can override the block title. I'm going to leave that. It'll just call it white papers. I'm just going to assign this to the content region. This is, as I was talking about before, Jeff, where you've got blocks of content. You can assign them to different regions. So if I just had a bulleted list, I might want to put that in the sidebar element of the page, or I might want to put it in the sidebar second, or even in the footer. And so on each Drupal template, you have these different regions where you can display blocks. I just want mine to appear in the main content, so I select content there. Now, the next cool thing that Drupal allows me to do, and gives me, is a whole host of options as to the visibility settings. So I'm gonna leave these by default, but just run through them quickly. And there's also some handy tips here. I could put something like blog there, or blog even, slash, and then put a wildcard after, and that would then display on everyone's blog, on every blog page on the site. So I've only got to put it there once. I have to change that to that as well. So only the listed pages. I can also display this by content type. We only have the two default ones here of article and basic page. So I could say for every article page on this site and every basic page I want this to show. So if it was like a product matrix or something like that, or a list of product supporting product documentation, we might want to show that just on the product pages, which were of a specific content type. In that case, I could come into the content type, click here, and then it would show on all of those pages. Finally, I can do it by user role. And you can choose whether that's customizable by users. I've only ever used the top two settings for that, to be honest. But these are the default block behaviors in Drupal, so this isn't part of the module. This is just in integrating this with Drupal's block system. This is like a free win that we got. I'm going to say all pages except those listed. I don't really have any pages on here. It's just a default install, so I just want it to appear on the home page so you can see it working. Okay, so I'm going to click on Save Block, and I'm just going to exit the admin overlay. What you can see now is the white papers from Alfresco Share, and they've just appeared at the top of the content list there. And we just get a nice, where we put the description, we get a description written out there. The other ones, I didn't edit any descriptions for them, so you don't see anything underneath, it just leaves that blank. Click on those.
Hey Ian, WebEx is lagging again, so hold on
a second.
Yeah,
okay.
We're still seeing the blocks dialogue, I think.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Now I can see the list of white papers that are coming back from Alfresco.
But it's nice to know I've got a bit of a margin for error, Jeff, in case there's any more errors.
Yeah, we're doing this because you're such a colorful character. We have to censor you from time to time, so you're on a second delay.
Brilliant. Okay, fantastic. Well, I'll be very careful then. You can see on that top one there, there's a description because we entered that in Alfresco Share, and the other ones don't have that. They're all modified 7th of March because that's when I uploaded them. I'll just go in very briefly and just change this one. Okay, so I've just launched Alfresco Share in a separate browser, going back to where I was. Let me know if that's not loaded, Jeff.
Yeah, I see you typing the title.
Ah, fantastic. Taking my delay off. Okay, so I've just put just tidied up the title in there and also put a description in. I'm going to save that, and the details have been updated successfully, the dialog says. I'm now going to go back to Drupal and just do a refresh on that page. And you see instantly the details there have changed.
Well, you see instantly, but we are, there we go.
It's WebEx instantly, that is. So best practice is for people to always put things like description and friendly titles on, and through this, I think particularly on the partners site, it's really encouraged people to think about how they're naming things, what titles they've got, and what descriptions are on there. For the current release of CMS Views, it's been having this functionality where it does that merge on the title field is if you use that folder, if you select by folder, and then it does that automatic join on the title field in the CMS query, it does break it with other CMS repositories. So one of the things that we're looking at going forward is actually looking at the CMS repository in it being able to tell us what fields it's got, and then being able to select your piece of content around that. The difficulty with that is that we want to sort of keep this simple and make it so that, you know, almost anyone can go in there and just add some content to a Drupal site from Alfresco, or upload site into Alfresco from Drupal and then create a view on a page. We don't want to sort of start making it really complicated by selecting what fields you want where, because that, you know, that makes it harder for administrators to administer.
Yeah, I agree with that. If someone clicks on one of these links, will the file be streamed directly from Alfresco, or does it make a stop at Drupal first before it gets into the browser?
This is coming directly from Alfresco, so it's still stored in Alfresco. So if I just just hover over that. I'm not sure how well anyone can see that. In the bottom left-hand side of my screen, it's still got the Alfresco node reference on there. It actually uses a CMS browser module and some of the stuff in there to send it through and just pull the file back, and it downloads it for you. One of the things that we'd like to do with this in sort of V2 when we get to it is use that same, preferably not Flash, but flashy file preview that you get in Alfresco Share, so that when you click on that file, you'll stay within Drupal and you'll see a really nice glossy interface to be able to flick through the pages. That's a very, you know, a very nice to have, and certainly something that we're trying to get into for version 2.
So Ian, somebody is asking a question. Actually, it's from Steve, one of our longtime community superstars, and Steve is asking about the push, the AVM push stuff that Richard did, and he's wondering, did it push content from Alfresco into Drupal nodes, or did it push files into the Drupal file system that Drupal then picks up, or what was the how was content actually being sent from Alfresco to Drupal?
Okay, I'm going to take a stab at this, but I can't guarantee I'm 100% right. I believe that when it pushed the nodes, it was only the nodes that were pushed were HTML nodes, as opposed to being like file nodes. I could double check that for him and get back to him to confirm for certain. Obviously, if you put things into the file system, they need to be referenced somewhere. So a lot of these integrations don't go that far as putting things into Drupal's file system, because then it's just stored on a, on a folder on a Linux server somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, so I think you're probably right that those were HTML files coming out of Alfresco and just going into like Drupal pages or something.
Yeah, I think at the moment, there's a complications taking files from Alfresco and sticking them in Drupal. When we built CMS Views, we decided that it's Alfresco for documents and it's Drupal for web content and presentation, and we made that clear separation. So again, it goes back to that consideration of once you start having your sort of actual PDFs and Word files in separate places, it's just managing that and also attaching them to nodes and keeping them in the file system and having that reference as well. And that's got to be stored somewhere. So if you've got a file essentially, I suppose it's almost checked out of Alfresco, then you've got to manage that checkout. But I think with it being AVM based, I would pretty much presume they were all just HTML files in there.
Yeah. So here's a question from Tom. He's asking if there's any caching that prevents, a query to Alfresco for every page impression. So right now you've got, this white papers block on the home page. Is that going to be a hit to Alfresco on every page render?
Yeah. At the moment, Jeff, yeah, unfortunately it is. What we're planning on doing is integrating this at some point with possibly with the Views module and caching these queries so that the query itself is cached. So the only time that you go through to Alfresco is when you actually click on the document. And again, it's something we could possibly do using cron. So it just went off every 3 hours and check those cached queries.
Another question from Steve is he's asking if anyone has implemented or has anyone made Drupal a CMIS provider? I know there's been talk of that, but I don't know if there's been any progress made.
Yeah, I don't think there's been any progress made. I've heard talk of it as well, and it'd be a very interesting project to see come into fruition. Yeah, I'm just thinking of the real world after, how that would be used, but it'd be very interesting to see it happening, but not that I know of at the moment. There could be someone sat working away on that at this very moment, though.
So Igor is asking, will any of these modules work with custom content models and aspects?
Yeah, I mean, they'll all work. As to what level of functionality you get from that is dependent on. The CMS Views module that we've written uses the titled aspect, and that's why it breaks that compatibility with other CMS repositories. And without having that title aspect, it doesn't really give a lot, because you just get a file name and then an icon. I guess you can save it in the blocks. It's something that I was going to I'll just skip through a few slides because I'm conscious we're coming up to the hour mark. One of the things that I wanted to talk about is that support of different fields. And to make this more generic in version 2, what we'd like to do is make it become a Views plugin, and then it would actually look at the CMS repository, see which fields are available, whether they're custom fields or fields that are part of aspects, and then allow you to build a view based on that. People who are familiar with views in Drupal, it's essentially a very easy way of saying, writing an SQL query from a graphical user interface. So you might be able to say, show me all of the press releases ordered by the most recent, and then apply like a pager to that, so you can have 10 on a page. What we'd like to do is extend CMS Views so it integrates with that. So we can say, I've just got a quick screen grab there. So show me all Alfresco content of CM content type sorted by the newest first, and then you could either build a page or a block, which would then integrate with how it currently works. And at that point, that's when we'd have that integration with any different field you're having there. Again, it's a little bit more complicated, but certainly I think to people in the Drupal world, I think it would probably make sense for it to work as that. And that's where it really got its name from, CMS Views, was that it was sort of loosely based on Views itself. And I'd really like to take it there as being an integrated Views plugin. that also benefits us with things like caching.
I'm pretty sure that the CMS API module can deal with custom content types, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
I don't think
can. It'll show you them, Jeff, in the file details. It's just getting those. When you use CMS Views, it's using the titles aspect, so it won't choke on them or anything. It's just what you want to do with those fields and how you want to display them on the page.
Yeah,
it might be that.
I was thinking of the sync module. I'm pretty sure you can sync from custom metadata properties to node properties within.
I think you're right. You can configure that.
So it's just Tom. That to your follow-up question, that should be possible. The trick on aspects is, and I don't know. I know OpenCMS, which is the Java CMS API, supports aspects. I know the Python API supports aspects, but I don't know. And I know in what you're doing here to work with the titled aspect as a query, which you can do a join on aspects, but I don't know about doing things that are not query based.
I think
the PHP API.
I think they're generally returned, particularly in a query, they're returned there. It's just how you then get at those. So certainly, if you are able to return them. It's just what you do with them. And at the moment, none of these modules enable you to go and pluck those fields out and display them as like next to the title or something like that. So certainly they're supported with the CMS API, and you could use that to build up on and sort of build your own version of something like CMS Views that specifically asks for your aspects. Or alternatively, hopefully we'll get to the point where CMS Views becomes a Views plugin, and then it will allow you to select which fields you actually want as part of your list that's displayed.
Yeah, that would be cool. So do you have time for another quick question while we're?
Yeah, I've got time, Jeff.
Okay.
Fire away.
So Steve is asking about in the sync module how or if associations are handled. So is there any support for associations in
I don't think there is. It's not something I've tested, but I'm just trying to think how associations will be handled in Drupal anyway, and I'm pretty sure that doesn't come across.
Yeah.
I'm afraid.
Okay.
It's also worth remembering, Jeff, with the sync module that it's only syncing HTML files. So it's not syncing things like Word documents or PDFs. So it's not syncing to the file system. It's just syncing from Alfresco HTML nodes into Drupal nodes.
All right. Let's see. Okay, I think that's the questions for now. Do you have some more slides that you wanted to get through?
I think I was just really about. I'll just skip back a few. I think I've sort of touched on sort of how that's working. Also, I mean, one of the features of that demo is you can actually change that theme retrospectively. So you can change the settings for each CMS view, and you might want to change it to a bulleted view. You can fire up the settings and just change that theme. And also you get permissions, so you can choose who's able to access those menus in there. I think I started talking about future plans as well. What we'd like to do is continue using CMS Sync, because I think it's quite an interesting bit of, an interesting approach to it. With the partner site, we have some technical challenges making search work. And what I'd like to do is a little bit like the GMB solution, is take those, take sort of subnodes across with properties and descriptions and things like that, and put them into Drupal, so that when we run Drupal search, we're able to actually see Alfresco content in there as well. One of the ways of doing that in Drupal 7 will probably be to use entities, which are a node itself is an entity, but having a separate entity for an Alfresco document, which would just be a stub essentially to point back to the repository and have some metadata applied to it that we could search against. But also, like CMS Views, we're hoping to make that into a Views plugin. And again, CMS Search, we have search on the partner site. I haven't sort of gone into detail about that today because it's pretty basic, and hopefully it's going to eventually roll into what we're doing here. but would like to have that federated across both systems, so both Alfresco and Drupal. And then just touched on CMS Views as a plugin. And I think that's pretty much everything, Jeff. I think most of these build upon CMIS to offer a quick solution. Certainly, Rich McKnight's wrapper has sort of given everyone a leg up there. The CMIS API is great scaffolding for building your own Drupal application out of that. And Rich's wrapper, if you wanted to use CMIS elsewhere in another PHP application, is a great place to start. For me and for what we've implemented it for, I think it gives the best of both worlds application. You've got great document management, collaboration, and also great web content management. I think they haven't got so much in common that they compete with each other. I think they work quite nicely together and it feels like they coexist quite well. And if people want to get involved and sort of help to shape the future of CMS Views particularly, and you can do, or any of the modules, you can do that on Drupal.org and add-ons at alfresco.com.
Awesome. Well, Ian, I think this is cool. I mean, I think the way you're using Drupal and Alfresco together is the way a lot of people would like to use it, which is that you have, obviously at Alfresco, we use Alfresco internally to manage everything. And but we want to be able to put these websites up quickly and have them be manageable and things like that, and Drupal is great for doing that. And so things like CMS Views and the CMS API module allow us to get at all of that content living in our repository and then put them up and expose that to these websites, which is exactly what you're doing.
Certainly.
So Steve, on your AVM question, Richard did some follow-up for us there, and it turns out that Richard's using the Drupal RPC interface, and he's taking the nodes and putting those in. He's taking the Alfresco content and putting those into Drupal nodes, so it's not pushing to the file system. If you wanted to push to the file system, you could, because you could use the file system deployer, but then, like Ian was saying, then you'd have to sort of tell Drupal, I guess, about those files.
And then manage the relationships, etc. And I guess that gets quite complicated.
So the other thing that this shows, I think, is that a Drupal person doesn't really have to know that much about Alfresco to get to that Alfresco content. In fact, they don't really even have to know that much about CMIS if they're just pointing to a folder. They can just point to the folder path and they're there. If they go the next step of learning how to write a CMIS query, then they can certainly do that, but they don't need to do that.
Yeah, certainly, Jeff. I think CMIS is a great leveler here, and I mean, the only thing I've done from the stock install of Alfresco is just uploaded those, or created a site and uploaded documents, and likewise with Drupal, I've just put 2 modules in there, and it enables you to have that joined up solution straight away.
Hey, you said earlier that you were doing that you could filter the contents of the CMS view by tag, but maybe I misunderstood you. Is that because I didn't think you could get to tags from CMIS?
You can. You need to write it as a query. You're going to ask me for an example of the query now, aren't you?
Well, that would be the next follow-up.
Let me just have a quick look. I was discussing this with Will Abson this week. I'm just pulling up my Skype history here. That's a big, long.
So
query.
Okay, that's fine. That's okay. So it's good to know that that's possible, and so basically, right now there's not like a tag filter in CMS Views. Obviously, that would be Alfresco specific if it was in there.
Yeah.
So if you know how to write the query to get to it, then you just make that choice and then put the query in there, and away you go.
Yeah, exactly. So if you've got, I mean, someone like Will's obviously got a lot more technical knowledge. So rather than using the folder view, he's able to write his own CMS queries and get a little bit, use more power there. And I think moving forward, because we have used those tags, I think it'll probably be an option in a future version to actually select tags. Again, I keep saying with the views integration, but that provides all the GUI for there, so it might be a nice place to put it.
Yeah.
Should I just share my, you can put and contains, and then that's going to be easier if I share my screen here. So if you just add this, add the clause into your CMIS query. This is how I think Will concocted this. And that will search for everything of the tag 4.0.
Oh, interesting.
I think there might be something on the wiki about tags as well.
All right, I'm gonna check that. That's cool.
Okay.
All right, very cool. Well, thanks for joining, everybody. And just a quick reminder that we do this on the first Wednesday of every month. So that means April 4th, if I'm reading my calendar correctly, will be the next time that we do this, Wednesday, April 4th, same time. And April's topic will be designing content models and forms using UI tools. So basically, you know, if you're an Alfresco person, you know that we're constantly writing content models using XML and then doing a bunch of share form configuration by hand. And now in addons.alfresco.com, there are multiple add-ons freely available to make that possible in a GUI. So we will have some of the developers of those add-ons with us to talk us through that, and so it should be interesting. So thanks again, everybody, and we will talk to you next time.